A familiar comedy legend stepped onto a daytime talk show set expecting a standard promotional appearance, the kind he had done countless times before. The atmosphere initially felt light and welcoming, with studio lights glowing and the audience buzzing with anticipation. Adam Sandler took his seat with a relaxed posture and an easygoing smile that had defined his public persona for decades. Fans in the crowd greeted him warmly, their applause reflecting genuine affection for an entertainer whose work had been part of their lives for years. Everything suggested a smooth and friendly conversation ahead. As soon as the cameras went live, however, the mood shifted. Joy Behar's expression hardened, and her tone carried an edge that cut through the cheerful energy in the room. She wasted no time steering the conversation in a confrontational direction, openly criticizing Sandler's latest film and dismissing it as childish and outdated. Her remarks implied that his style of comedy lacked depth and relevance, especially given his age and long career. The warmth in Sandler's smile faded slightly, though he remained composed and attentive. Sandler responded calmly, explaining that his goal had always been to make people laugh and offer relief during difficult times. He spoke about comedy as a simple but powerful tool, one that allowed families to share moments of happiness and forget their worries, even if only briefly. His voice stayed measured, and he appeared genuinely sincere in defending the value of light-hearted entertainment. For him, laughter itself carried meaning. Behar immediately seized on his words with open sarcasm. She mocked his explanation and reduced his body of work to crude jokes and exaggerated voices, suggesting that his films contributed nothing of substance to society. Her criticism grew sharper as she challenged him to justify his success in a world filled with serious social and political issues. According to her, someone with his wealth and influence should be addressing larger problems rather than producing what she called shallow amusement. The tension in the studio became unmistakable. Other hosts shifted uneasily, and one attempted to soften the exchange with a neutral comment, but Behar spoke over her without hesitation. She pressed on, listing national and global crises and accusing Sandler of profiting from simplistic entertainment while ignoring his supposed responsibility to educate and inspire change. The audience grew quieter, sensing the discomfort spreading across the set. Sandler took a slow breath, maintaining his laid-back demeanor, though signs of strain were beginning to show. He argued that Behar was underestimating both comedy and the intelligence of audiences. He described the importance of giving people a break from stress, pointing out that joy and laughter could be just as meaningful as serious commentary. For parents, children, and everyday people facing pressure, an hour of shared laughter could make a real difference. Behar scoffed openly, rolling her eyes in full view of the cameras. She dismissed his explanation as public relations talk and accused him of lowering cultural standards. In her view, children should be focused on learning about important issues rather than consuming what she labeled immature humor. Her tone grew increasingly harsh, and the studio crew behind the scenes appeared visibly uneasy as the exchange escalated. Without slowing down, Behar shifted her attack to another angle. She accused Sandler's films of reinforcing harmful stereotypes about women, claiming that female characters in his movies were often shallow, objectified, or reduced to punchlines. She framed this as particularly irresponsible in a time when women were pushing for stronger representation and equality in media. The accusation hung heavily in the air. Sandler's jaw tightened, but he remained respectful. He countered that his work had often featured talented female actors and comedians, many of whom played confident and capable characters. He cited examples from his films where women were portrayed as intelligent, independent, and equal partners within the story. He emphasized his long history of collaborating with women and supporting their comedic voices. Behar dismissed his examples with a wave of her hand, calling those roles insignificant and labeling them token gestures. She accused him of hiding behind minor details to excuse a larger pattern. According to her, he represented a broader cultural problem, someone with immense influence who chose to focus on stories about immature men and trivial pursuits, rather than meaningful growth or social progress.
Murmurs rippled through the audience as discomfort turned into visible unease. Some viewers shifted in their seats, while others exchanged glances, surprised by the relentless hostility of the exchange. Sandler briefly looked toward the other hosts, perhaps hoping someone would step in, but they appeared frozen, unsure how to redirect the conversation. When he spoke again, Sandler chose his words carefully. He explained that entertainment and activism did not have to cancel each other out, and that different forms of expression could coexist. He reiterated that his primary responsibility, as he saw it, was to entertain people honestly and bring moments of happiness into their lives. He took that responsibility seriously, even if others chose not to value it in the same way.
He explained that caring about serious issues did not conflict with creating comedy, and that making people laugh was not an act of social harm. Before he could continue, Joy cut him off sharply, insisting that his role was defined entirely by his own choices. She accused him of willingly participating in an industry that distracted people from real struggles while enriching itself in the process. In her view, that was not harmless entertainment, but a form of exploitation. The accusation lingered heavily in the studio, and for the first time since the segment began, Adam Sandler's familiar grin vanished completely. His expression hardened, and a quiet intensity settled over his face, signaling that a line had been crossed. He spoke calmly, but his voice carried a gravity that drew the attention of everyone in the room. He said that if exploitation was the topic, then it deserved a deeper examination. The studio grew still as his words landed, and Joy's confident expression faltered briefly as she sensed the balance of power shifting. Adam repeated the word with deliberate emphasis, explaining that if responsibility and platform ethics were now under scrutiny, then her own record should be part of the discussion. He pointed out that she appeared daily on national television, claiming to speak on behalf of women and marginalized groups, yet often seemed to do little more than belittle and attack others. Joy bristled immediately, her eyes narrowing as she defended herself. She asserted that she had supported progressive causes long before he ever stepped onto a movie set, and she rejected any criticism from someone she dismissed as a purveyor of cheap laughs. Adam leaned back slightly, unfazed, and noted that this reaction illustrated his point perfectly. He described the tone she adopted as condescending and rooted in an assumption of moral superiority. He added that if harmful representation was truly a concern, then her long-standing portrayal of outspoken women as perpetually angry, bitter, and judgmental deserved equal scrutiny. The other hosts exchanged uneasy looks as the conversation moved well beyond a typical on-air disagreement. The atmosphere felt charged, almost volatile. Joy snapped back, her voice rising enough to unsettle the audience. She insisted that she represented real women with legitimate concerns about the state of the country, not people with the luxury of hiding behind jokes while serious problems intensified. Adam echoed her phrase thoughtfully and responded that in his experience, most people, including women, valued laughter and moments of relief. He said they appreciated entertainment that did not scold them or shame them for enjoying something light. Joy dismissed this outright, claiming that such preferences were the result of social conditioning and internalized misogyny. She argued that women deserved better than what she characterized as low-quality material. Adam shook his head slowly, pointing out that her argument effectively dismissed the voices and choices of millions of women simply because they did not align with her personal ideology. He said that implying those women were incapable of deciding what they enjoyed was not empowering, but patronizing. She responded by saying that people deserved content that challenged them intellectually instead of catering to basic tastes, though a defensive edge crept into her tone. Adam countered that this position suggested she believed she knew better than others about what they should want, think, and enjoy. He stated that this mindset was not genuine feminism, but elitism disguised as activism.
The audience remained completely silent, acutely aware that they were witnessing an unusually raw confrontation. Whoopi, known for her sharp wit and command of the table, appeared to struggle to regain control of the exchange. Whoopi finally attempted to redirect the segment, suggesting a shift toward discussing Adam's upcoming work and allowing tempers to cool. Joy rejected the suggestion outright, briefly glaring at her co-host before turning her attention back to Adam. She expressed a desire to hear how someone associated with one of his more notorious films believed himself qualified to speak on feminism compared to a woman with decades of industry experience. Adam smiled then, though it lacked his usual warmth. The expression was measured and deliberate. He acknowledged the film she referenced and admitted openly that it was not his strongest effort. He described it as exaggerated, absurd, and entirely consistent with his established style. However, he emphasized what it was not. He said it was never intended to be cruel, hateful, or dismissive of people based on their appearance, beliefs, or backgrounds. He stressed that it did not target those with less power and was never meant to tear anyone down. Joy interjected again, reducing the project to a crude summary and dismissing his explanation. The tension remained thick in the studio as the exchange continued, with both figures firmly entrenched in their positions and the audience keenly aware that the conversation had crossed into territory rarely seen on live daytime television.
He pointed out that she had spent nearly the entire segment making disparaging remarks about his career, his integrity, and even the people who enjoyed his work. He emphasized that the difference between them was simple. His films were openly presented as comedy, while her conduct was being framed as serious journalism. Joy's face reddened as irritation turned into visible anger. She snapped back, insisting that his Hollywood output could not be compared to meaningful political discussion. She claimed she was merely holding him accountable for the influence he wielded. Adam answered evenly, saying she was not holding anyone accountable at all, but instead putting on a performance. In his view, she was using him as a convenient prop to reinforce her image as the moral authority of daytime television. He added that she did not truly care about his movies or their effect, but rather about proving her intellectual dominance to the audience. Joy scoffed, calling the accusation absurd, though her composure was clearly faltering. Adam pressed on, asking her to name specific moments from his films that she believed were harmful. He challenged her to cite exact lines of dialogue or scenes that demonstrated the societal damage she claimed his work caused. Joy hesitated, opening her mouth and then closing it again, visibly unprepared for the demand. Adam continued, stating that she could not answer because she had not actually watched his movies. Instead, she was criticizing a stereotype built from assumptions, secondhand opinions, and isolated clips seen online. According to him, she was condemning work she had never genuinely engaged with. Joy argued weakly that she did not need to watch every one of his films to understand their cultural influence, though her voice lacked the earlier bite. Adam countered that publicly attacking someone's work on national television required first-hand knowledge. He described this as intellectual honesty, the line separating thoughtful critique from character assassination. The balance of the exchange had shifted entirely. Joy, who had begun as the aggressor, now appeared defensive, struggling to hold her ground as Adam's responses grew sharper and more controlled. Adam then explained that her real issue with him had little to do with comedy. The problem, he said, was his success in creating entertainment that fell outside her narrow definition of what qualified as meaningful art. That success challenged her belief that media must either conform to strict political standards or be dismissed as worthless. Joy's hands trembled slightly as she replied that her frustration stemmed from his perceived waste of talent and opportunity, while serious artists fought to have their voices heard. Adam shook his head sadly, saying that this revealed her true worldview.
In her eyes, success without her approval was invalid, and joy that did not align with her permission was frivolous. He accused her of appointing herself the gatekeeper of culture, tearing down anyone who thrived outside her rules. The words struck a nerve. Joy's eyes flashed with barely restrained fury as the polished professionalism she had maintained for years began to unravel. She accused him of arrogance, mocking his image as a humble, relatable entertainer who only wanted to make people laugh. She claimed to see through what she called his act. Adam listened, curious but steady, as she launched into a personal attack. She described him as a privileged white man who had built a career on mediocrity, benefiting from connections and favoritism, while more deserving voices were sidelined. She accused him of coasting through the industry and then daring to lecture others about integrity. The accusation hung in the studio like a poisonous cloud. Even the other hosts appeared stunned by how personal and vicious the exchange had become. Adam's expression hardened completely. He warned her calmly but firmly to be careful, saying she was making claims about his character and career that were untrue and potentially damaging. Joy sneered in response, saying his discomfort was well-deserved and suggesting it might teach him not to challenge women who cared about changing the world. Adam replied that he had not attacked her at all, only responded to her repeated assaults with facts and observations about her conduct. However, if she wanted to make the discussion personal, he was prepared to examine her career as well. He described how she had built her public persona around being perpetually outraged, tearing people down for failing to meet her rigid standards. Joy erupted, her face flushed as she defended her lifelong commitment to progressive causes, women's rights, and social justice. She demanded to know what he had accomplished beyond profiting from immature humor. Adam answered simply and without theatrics. He said he had made millions of people happy, given families shared moments of enjoyment, and provided steady work for hundreds of actors, writers, and crew members. The studio remained tense, the weight of his words settling heavily as the confrontation reached a level rarely seen on live television.
He said that he had contributed to charities quietly for years without turning generosity into a publicity tool. And more importantly, he had never used his visibility to tear down people simply because they disagreed with him. Joy fired back immediately, accusing him of poisoning society with empty, thoughtless entertainment, though her voice had grown sharp and strained, betraying frustration. Adam responded firmly, telling her that the real damage was coming from her approach to disagreement. He said she was corroding meaningful discussion by turning every challenge into a personal attack. Instead of defending her position with substance, she was escalating with accusations that had no factual basis. This, he explained, was precisely why so many people felt exhausted by modern political debates. Joy suddenly stood up from her chair, the abrupt movement startling everyone at the table. She declared that she did not have to sit there and listen to lectures from someone she dismissed as an unoriginal comedian. Adam replied quietly that no one was forcing her to stay, his calm words echoing through the sudden hush in the studio. Joy demanded to know what he had just said, her voice rising sharply. Adam repeated himself, explaining that she was choosing to remain there just as she was choosing to behave the way she was. He added that she was attacking him personally because she could not defend her argument on an intellectual level. That was the moment Joy completely lost control. She erupted, shouting insults and demanding to know who he thought he was to come onto her show and speak to her that way. The audience reacted audibly, gasping as the exchange spiraled. One host covered her mouth in disbelief, another shrank back in her seat, and even Whoopi, no stranger to heated television moments, appeared stunned by the intensity of Joy's breakdown. Adam calmly repeated her words, raising an eyebrow as he pointed out that the studio did not belong to her. He said it was not a personal domain, and that respect was earned through conduct, not demanded through status. Joy screamed that she was finished. She said she was done with him, done with the conversation, and done pretending that people like him deserved airtime.
Her hands shook as she struggled to remove her microphone. Whoopi tried to step in, urging everyone to take a break and cool off, but Joy snapped back that she was not taking a break and was not calming down. She declared she was leaving and would not sit there being insulted by someone she derided as a Hollywood fraud. Adam remained seated, watching her frantic movements, and said evenly that he had never claimed to be better than anyone else. However, he made it clear that he would not sit quietly while being used as an emotional punching bag for whatever was driving her hostility. Joy spun around to face him again, her microphone half detached and producing harsh feedback through the speakers. She insisted this was not about personal issues, but about principles, about caring for something beyond fame and money. She accused him of being incapable of handling disagreement without falling apart emotionally. Adam replied with quiet honesty, saying that the situation unfolding in front of everyone was painful to watch. That statement pushed Joy over the edge. She ripped the microphone off completely, slammed it onto the table with a loud thud, and pointed angrily at him. She declared that he had ruined what should have been a simple interview about his latest film and accused him of bullying her on national television. She said she hoped he was proud of himself and that his fans enjoyed seeing a woman humiliated. Adam's voice never rose. He said plainly that the only person behaving like a bully was her, reminding her that she had initiated the attacks on his work, his character, and the people who supported him. He explained that he had done nothing more than defend himself. Joy snarled dismissively, grabbed her notes, and stormed toward the exit, announcing that she was done with the show and done with a network she believed had abandoned journalistic integrity. As she reached the edge of the set, she turned back one final time, her face twisted with rage. She accused him of exploiting the goodwill of ordinary people by presenting himself as harmless while spreading what she called harmful values to their children. Adam shook his head slowly, sadness evident in his expression. He told her goodbye and said he hoped she eventually found what she was truly searching for, because it clearly was not there. Joy Behar then stormed off the set, her heels striking the floor loudly as she disappeared down the hallway. She left behind a shocked studio, shaken co-hosts, and an audience that had just witnessed one of the most dramatic moments in daytime television. The camera lingered on Adam Sandler, still seated, not triumphant but visibly disappointed. As the weight of what had happened settled over the room, silence filled the space, broken only by the fading sound of Joy's footsteps, marking her exit not just from the interview, but seemingly from the show itself.